When we think about the apostles, our minds tend to be drawn to the more famous personalities like St. Peter and St. John the Evangelist, these people about whom there's such a wealth of Christian tradition. But sometimes the abundance of material about these great figures causes us to neglect the other apostles, about whom we often know so little. And I think to a large extent this is true of St. Philip the Apostle. Not much is known historically about the Apostle Philip beyond what the Gospels tell us. All that tradition hands down to us is that he preached to the Scythian tribes in the north, and that he died in a city called Hierapolis in Asia Minor. Now, despite this lack of historical information, the scriptures actually have quite a lot to tell us about the Apostle Philip, especially the Gospel of John. In the very first chapter of John's Gospel, it is Philip who, along with Peter and Andrew, recognizes Jesus as the Messiah, the one foretold by Moses and the prophets. When Philip tries to share this discovery with his companion Nathanael, Nathanael expresses skepticism with that famous rhetorical question, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" And to this bitterly sarcastic question, Philip simply responds, "Come and see." And Nathanael is brought to his life-changing encounter with Christ. So right at the very beginning of John's Gospel, we already find Philip as a man who brings others to Christ. Philip makes another crucial appearance in chapter 12 of the same Gospel. There we read that there were Greeks present in Jerusalem during the Feast of Tabernacles who wanted to see Jesus, and it was Philip that they approached with their request. And it's interesting to note that Philip is a very Greek name, meaning lover of horses. After receiving this request, Philip goes to get Andrew, the other apostle with a Greek name. So together, Philip and Andrew, the two apostles with Greek names, tell Jesus that there are Greeks who wish to see him. And this is how Jesus responds. "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." And this seemingly cryptic statement from Jesus is in fact loaded with theological significance. The Greeks that come to Philip to see Jesus represent the nations, the Gentiles, all of those people outside the nation of Israel. For all of salvation history, it had been God's plan to bring all nations back to himself through his son, Jesus Christ. And yet, for ages and ages, his special covenant relationship was restricted to the people of Israel. Nevertheless, in the Jewish scriptures, the prophets foretold a day when not only Jews in Israel, but the Greeks and the Persians and all the nations of the world would be united in the worship of the one true God. And Jews of Jesus' day, like Philip, awaited the Messiah, the great figure who would bring about this unification of the entire human race under God. So when the Greeks ask Philip to bring them to Jesus, that event represents the beginning of the fulfillment of God's long-awaited messianic plan for the reunification of the entire human race. So throughout Scripture and tradition, we see that Philip was a man who consistently brought others to Christ. The skeptical Nathanael, the philosophical Greeks, the warlike Scythians, and surely countless others. St. Philip was able to act as a bridge between these various cultures which were still ignorant of Christ, and his own Jewish culture, which had been given knowledge of God's plan for mankind. And I think in this way, Philip is a perfect model of the new evangelization that disciples of Christ are called to in these challenging times of ours. Like St. Philip the Apostle, we too must not only immerse ourselves in the richness of the scriptures and the liturgy and cultivate a deep personal relationship with Christ in prayer, but we must also labor to bring that grace of Christ to a world that still doesn't know him as it should. And in this way, we too can help bring to completion God's great plan for humanity. Brothers and sisters, keep studying. This is Brother Athanasius Thompson for the Western Dominican Province.